It is Wednesday, my dudes, and you are watching The Sweat presented by DraftKings. Jesse Cofield to my left.
Yeah.
Emerson Latzia to her right. Coming up, we're going to be joined by the Gojo Gang, a healthy dose of NFL over-under, NHL best bets, and PGA price check. But I see three ginormous heads.
Because we're starting in the association.
Monitor.
We are starting in the association.
Yeah!
We have DraftKings contributor Gary and Thorne. We have DK Nation's Chinmay Veja, RotoWire's Nick Whalen here to share their favorite plays on the DK Sportsbook tonight. We got an 8-game slate coming our way. We need to make sense of it. What is a money line bet that you like on this slate, Chinmay?
I really like Milwaukee. The Bucks are coming in at minus 135. You know, there was some talk of the Bucks slumping a little bit. They had lost 4 straight, but they've actually won 3 of their last 4. Giannis came out with a quote after the Hornets game basically saying he has full confidence in his guys. I know Chris Middleton is still out, but he's been out for a while now, and they found a way to play without him. They still have a ton of depth. They still have plenty of solid role players, and they still have the best player on the floor in Giannis, and maybe even the second best player on the floor in Drew Holiday. The Hawks have been struggling. They've lost 4 of their last 6, I believe, and I think Milwaukee's better than, a 2-point favorite here. So I'll take the Bucks on the money line, which I think at minus 135 is pretty good value. As a money line underdog, I like the Pacers at plus 165. Even on the spread, they're great. They're 18-11 against the spread this season as an underdog. So even Indiana there against the New York Knicks is a good plus play if you're looking at the money line for an underdog.
All right, Gary, and what money line bet are you rolling with?
Yeah, not a ton of money line bets I love tonight. Just some really big spreads. So there's not a ton of value to look at. I'm with Chinmay. I think first option would be Milwaukee, but if you want to go a different route than that, I guess the Wizards at plus 100. There's some really, really big injury question marks in this game on both sides. Is DeMar DeRozan going to play? Obviously, if he sits out, you feel a little bit better or a lot better about the Wizards' chances to win this game. But on the Wizards' side, no Brad Beal, we know that, but maybe no Kristaps Porzingis, maybe no Daniel Gafford. So lots up in the air here. So getting the Wizards at plus money is nice. They actually have the 7th best net rating in the NBA across their last 10 games. So they have been playing relatively well. But if Porzingis isn't playing, it's pretty hard to back them. But if we get a situation where Porzingis plays and DeRozan doesn't, suddenly this line seems really, really shallow. So backing the Wizards right now could have some upside.
Yeah, Nick, what do you think? There's kind of a lot of stuff up in the air right now.
Yeah, like Arian said, I mean, half the slate you could kind of cross off if you're looking for money line value just because we have so many big spreads. But I think he's right about the Wizards. You're kind of targeting that DeRozan injury situation. If you jump on that line now, you're hoping that things break your way, and it could end up being a plus situation for Washington. Wizards are 4-3 ATS this season as a home dog. I think you could make a case for the Hawks as well. I mean, they've split with Milwaukee thus far in terms of straight up results in their 2 previous games. Chris Middleton did not play in either of those. I think Milwaukee's going to be fine long term, but they're going through a weird funk right now. I mean, they are the worst offense in the league by offensive rating over the last 10 games. That is just not something you should ever say about this team, and yet it's true. So I don't really think they're a lock in any games these days, kind of in the same way that it felt like they were early on. So I think there is a little value in grabbing Atlanta at home at plus 115.
Hey, Gary, and we were talking last night on Instagram. I said, wow, you're out on a school night at the Raptors game. And to quote you said, yeah, doing research for tomorrow's NBA segment, bro. Okay, so how about a game spread then that maybe isn't exactly where you think it should be for tonight? Go ahead.
Yeah, seems odd that a Raptors-Hornets game could have an impact on tonight's Pacers-Knicks game. But I'm telling you, I saw something in that game that said Pacers plus 4.5. That's where you want to go here. I know Chinmay already mentioned that you could even bet these guys in the money line. I would probably prefer to bet them with the spread. If you want to sprinkle the money line, I think that's fine too. But in general, betting on the Pacers with the spread, with the points, has worked out for you this season. They're hitting at a 61% clip against the spread. That is the best mark in the NBA. They are 6-1 ATS in their last 7 games. They are 8-2 straight up in their last 10 games, and they have a top 10 offensive rating in the NBA within that span of time. I think we can just say the Pacers are good. at this point. They're far better than anyone expected, and they're probably going to be at least a play-in team in the Eastern Conference. And they're sort of at a similar tier as the Knicks, who at times the Knicks seem like they could be a top 5 team in the East, and then they go on a stretch where they seem like they're the Knicks again. And one big thing to think about with the Knicks, and we kind of hear this from players, specifically across the last 10, 15 years, about guys love playing at the Garden, but they love playing against the Knicks at the Garden. The ATS record of the Knicks this season backs that up. They are 7-12-2 against the spread in New York. That is the 3rd worst cover percentage for a home team in the NBA this season. So betting on the Spurs, generally good. Betting on the Knicks or against the Knicks at home, generally good. Just take the 4.5 points.
Nick, what's the spread du jour for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the kind of clear favorite on this slate. You could maybe make a case that Pelicans, Celtics should be a little bit closer, but with the injuries, excuse me, in New Orleans, I think it's understandable that one's ballooned up to 9.5. If Anthony Edwards doesn't end up playing tonight for Minnesota, he's questionable. I think that line could end up looking a little bit too high, but you're taking a risk if you're jumping on the Detroit Pistons at +6.5, or really on the Detroit Pistons at any number this season. So yeah, I think Gary laid out a pretty compelling case for Pacers Knicks. It's kind of right in that middle zone. Could be a point or two maybe in favor of Indiana. And he mentioned the Knicks ATS record at home. They're 6-8-1 in home games in which they're favored. So it doesn't really even seem to matter what type of opponent is coming in. They have struggled in those situations. So right as of right now, I like the Pacers with the 4.5.
Chinmay, what's your spread tonight that you want to target?
I actually like the Timberwolves, regardless of whether Anthony Edwards plays or not, mostly because the Pistons played a game yesterday. They got absolutely demolished by the 76ers, and they're probably going to be without Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart, and Bojan Bogdanovic again. So the Timberwolves should have a feast inside on these guys. A second night of a back-to-back is typically bad news for most teams, but especially for the Pistons, they just have not been good on that second night. And then I'll take the Pelicans +9.5, a team that has managed to play through a lot of injuries and just keeps going and keeps chugging along. They haven't been great against the spread, so that is a little bit concerning, but I think 9.5 is a huge number, even against a very good Boston Celtics team. I'll take New Orleans at that line.
All right, Nick, what game total is one that you think you should consider targeting tonight?
Got a lot of high totals on the slate. Once again, that's becoming a common theme in the NBA. And, I'm looking at some of these late games. The Suns Nuggets is at 226. That one's a little bit lower. Suns coming in on the second night of a back-to-back. We have no idea how many of their regulars will be available. I think this could be one of those situations where, maybe Denver's able to take care of business in the first half, take its foot off the gas. We saw that the other night against LA. Rockets Kings as well. Up at 238. I don't never really know if I can trust this Rockets team offensively night to night. You're kind of entrusting Kevin Porter Jr. and Jabari Smith and Jalen Green, who have just not been efficient with a lot of heavy lifting to get that to 238. And the Kings, that they are a team that's improved this year, but at the same time, I still beyond their top two options, De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, I still think they have some fairly significant question marks when it comes to hitting a total like this. So I'm a little iffy on Suns Nuggets, but I like the under on that 238 for Rockets Kings.
Chinmay, Spurs Grizzlies have the highest total right now on the slate at 238.5.
As Nick mentioned, there's a lot of blowout potential here for some of these teams. And he hinted at Kings Rockets. I think the Kings have had some of the highest totals set for their games over the last week, and they've gone under in pretty much all of them. So it's not really fun to bet some of these insanely high numbers. I'm going under on the Bulls-Wizards game. It's coming in at 229.5 last time I checked. And they've gone under in both games this season. At that number, they've gone under that line. And there's a ton of injury questions, as Garion mentioned earlier. And I think if DeRozan doesn't play, this total will drop even more. But you also have Porzingis and Gafford potentially out for the Wizards. I think 229 is a high number. And if some of these guys get ruled out, you're hoping for some positive injury news on that front if you're betting the under. This will move down even more. So right now, I'll take the under on Bulls-Wizards.
Garion, what's the play here?
I am with these guys in the sense that across the slate as a whole, I would probably prefer some unders to some overs. But I will say that Memphis-San Antonio game, which does happen to have the highest total on this slate, I would lean to the over on that one. I could actually see that sort of playing out a lot like the 76ers Pistons game from last night, where Memphis just puts up like 140 and does a lot of the work itself here. I mean, the Spurs are terrible on defense. They have the worst defensive rating in the NBA across their last 10 games. And in that same span of time, these two teams rank 2nd and 7th in the NBA in pace. So it's going to be a ridiculously up-tempo game. The Spurs have actually been scoring points as of late. That hasn't been a problem. It's just their defense is a tire fire. So I think Memphis does enough here, and the Spurs can kind of survive. Maybe even Keldon Johnson plays in this game, and that adds a little offensive potency to the Spurs. But in general, betting the over with these teams. Memphis 4-0, their past 4 games to the over. The last 9 times the Spurs have played on the road, the over is hit. So generally speaking, these teams play high-scoring games that hit the over.
Nick, out of all the player props available on the DK Sportsbook on this slate tonight, which one is your favorite right now?
I'm going with a Harrison Barnes player prop, guys. You can look at either his point total or perhaps even juicier, his over on 1.5 made threes. The points are sitting at 15.5. He's cleared that in 5 straight games. He's also cleared the threes in 7 straight games. Coming into this year, I kind of thought Keegan Murray would eat into Harrison Barnes' workload a lot more than it has early on. That was the case, but he's kind of back now to playing 35-plus minutes a lot of nights. Great matchup against the Houston Rockets. We expect a lot of points in this game, and no team in the NBA allows more 3-point attempts to opponents than the Houston Rockets. So choosing between those two Barnes props, I like the over on 1.5 made 3-pointers.
Where are you going here, Garion?
I'm also going to go with a made threes over. One of the big storylines for Atlanta this season, and one of the reasons they've been so inconsistent, is suddenly Trae Young is not an elite 3-point shooter. He's not even really taking a high volume of 3-pointers, at least in comparison to what we've seen in years past. That's starting to turn around a little bit. His prop is set at 2.5 tonight. The over is actually paying plus money at plus 105. He's gone over 2.5 threes in 6 of his last 9 games. And Milwaukee, I mean, their defensive philosophy really hasn't changed the last half decade under Mike Budenholzer. They will not let you have anything at the rim, but they are pretty content to let you rain threes if that's what you want to do. So I feel like Trae Young, who actually had 5 made 3-pointers the first time these two teams met this season, he's going to shoot a lot of threes tonight. I think he gets 3 of them.
Chinmay, bring us home with your favorite player prop.
I like Ja Morant to go over 27.5 points against the Spurs. Ja has been hitting this number very consistently. Spurs, as Nick mentioned, or Gary mentioned, really bad defensively. Morant's coming off a couple missed games with a thigh injury, but he's completely off the injury report, so he looks like he's cleared and 100%, and he should have a big party coming back on the court. And then Rudy Gobert under 13.5 rebounds. For some reason, Gobert is just not pulling down the boards as of late, and even with some of the Pistons injuries that they have in the front court, I'll go under 13.5, and what is a big number for Gobert, who has only hit this total, I think, once in his last 7 or 8 games. So that's an over and an under there on player props for tonight.
Good stuff, guys. Appreciate it as always. Up next, the boys from the Gojo Show are going to join us. And while all eyes are on the playoffs, the offseason has started for the majority of the NFL, and we've already seen some coaching changes. Could Sean McVay be next? We talk about it with Mike and Brandon coming up.
We have some developing news here on the Sweat. The Gojo Show continues to drop every weekday. Mike Golick Jr., Brandon Newman, our brothers in Christ, talking sports and stuff with some of the heaviest of hitters around the biz. So big dudes, big personalities, big selection of where to grab the podcast. Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, the iHeartRadio app, and get a modified version of it here on the Sweat every Wednesday.
Yep.
Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, guys. I enjoy the dance moves from everyone on set. We're feeling good walking into today. Positive vibes only.
Absolutely.
Feeling good.
Good morning, Brandon. How are you?
I'm doing great. That was a great intro by you. You're best.
Thank
Congratulations, 2023.
Thank you kindly. I really, truly appreciate it. Yeah, because last week, you guys remember hanging out here. It was an emotional discussion following the Damar Hamlin situation. The good news is he's been transferred to a hospital back in Buffalo. He's in good spirits. Mike, I'll start with you. How much credit do the Bills deserve here for taking care of business against the Patriots? We're not talking a normal preparation week here leading up to this game.
They deserve a ton. You heard Tre'Davious White, their star corner, who was in that defensive back room with Damar Hamlin, say, this week was a bleep show. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Damar, and I thought about that play, and I thought about our brother. And so with that as the backdrop and a group of coaches that had to also balance, hey, how much do we push guys during the week? How much do we focus in on that versus making sure we're checking in from the neck up on how these guys are all doing? It was all amazing. And that's why I think that, as we continue to harp on, that Nyheim Hines opening kickoff was so much more than just a special team score in a game that swung the balance. It was this immediate baptism back into the normal thing that they had all been doing. It sort of jolted them back in and said, oh, all right, we know how to do this. We can go out here and be successful in this thing, even with everything that we've been through. And I think that as we continue to write the story about that moment and their return from it, that'll be a massive part for that reason.
Yeah, Brandon, how impressed are you here, man? They had to watch that traumatic on-field collapse and then battle through heavy hearts for 6 days.
You said it jokingly, opening us up that we're brothers in Christ. It was a spiritual moment, as Josh Allen said to his teammates, and I thought it was perfect. And the reason why I think, whoever is upstairs is a football fan, because it was just a very, very special moment. You can't write it. Damar Hamlin, thank God you said he's moved from the hospital, back in the hospital in Buffalo. But the fact that this team was able to just focus on the game as best way they could, and then that was a jump start into focusing on the football, the immediate touchdown. I don't know, I'm extremely impressed with the Bills. They were already Super Bowl favorites for me and for everyone else who has been watching football all season long. Now I feel like they have a little bit of an edge going into the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of the playoffs, the Lions were knocked out. Then they knocked out the Packers. They said, if we ain't going, you ain't going. Dolphins made it into the playoffs, dragging out their third-string quarterback.
Yep.
Just pulling them up. Jags AFC South champs. Congratulations, Emerson.
Did a lot.
Houston handed the first overall pick to the Bears, a wild Week 18. What was your favorite storyline that came out of the madness, Brandon?
Actually, probably the people that didn't win. Mike Tomlin, or maybe even Dan Campbell. Like the storylines for the guys that fought their arses off, without having anything to play for. Like I loved how Dan Campbell handled that entire back half of the season. I love how they handled that game, especially when it comes to either we're going to go or we're going to play spoilers. But then Mike Tomlin, it's inevitable. 16 seasons in the NFL, all of them winning seasons. Build a statue. The man has done what I don't want to say no other coach, but the Steelers don't have a bunch of head coaches because they've been so successful, and he's at the top of the mountaintop. So I think going into the playoffs as a player who never got a chance to sniff any championship, I'm looking at the guys that are sitting home.
Yeah, Mike, what are you looking at?
So my original thought was Dan Campbell and the Lions, just because twofold. One, now it raises the stakes for Detroit. Yeah, they had been knocked out by Seattle earlier in the day, but now going into the offseason, as Ben Johnson, their offensive coordinator, is going to get a bunch of interviews as they sit with a high pick in the draft. they have to make decisions on what their future is going to look like. They are now a team with expectations. Based on what happened in the back half of the season, we are going to rightly go into the 2023 season expecting Detroit not just to be some plucky underdog story, but to position themselves as a team that can be taken seriously as a contender from day one. And that's going to involve Jared Goff. We heard their GM the other day come out and basically say, yeah, Jared Goff's done enough to be the starter for us, but if there's a good player available, we're going to have to make that decision. You combine that with the fact that now their future also seemed to directly impact the future of another quarterback in that division, in Aaron Rodgers, and the will he, won't he that now ensues after we saw him and Randall Cobb walk off arm in arm. And the ripple effects from that game, I think, are going to be massive, even for two teams that aren't playing in the postseason.
Okay, Mike, he's coming back, isn't he? Aaron Rodgers, and this is just a bunch of theatrics that we witnessed the other night.
I'm going to have to hold on to this one.
I can't give you my jersey. I'm just emotional, you see?
I would bet that if Aaron Rodgers is back, it feels like it's not for the Packers right now.
Oh.
It just feels like the vibe. That whole moment reeked of a man who was writing the end to his own story. Like the walk up the tunnel with Randall Cobb. Aaron Rodgers is too smart. Aaron Rodgers is too aware for all of this to just be sort of accidental theater, I think. And I understand how it goes at the end of the season. I heard the guys in the Le Batard show talking about this today. Right after the season, you don't have a bearing for what you're actually going to do retirement-wise for most guys. But for Aaron Rodgers, who's already thought about it before last season, who certainly is a little bit more introspective, even in real time, than most players that we talk about in this game, it just seemed like sort of a true farewell if you were going to write it, even if it was in adverse circumstances and not in a championship format like he would probably like to write if he had full control over the authorship of this one. So I wouldn't be shocked if this was the breaking point for these two sides after all of this, but predicting Aaron Rodgers' moves is like predicting the weather in Los Angeles right now, which appears to just be rain every damn day.
Surprised you have power, but here you are.
No. So, Brandon, since predicting is so difficult here, what's more likely in your opinion? He retires or he's wearing a different jersey next season?
I think a little bit of both. I think Tom Brady set a precedent. A little farewell to the Packers. I'll bid you adieu. Sorry, guys, I got to go. But then he's going to get picked up by another team. I think he already got Mike McCarthy fired. I don't think he can get Matt LaFleur fired as well. And they've had friction since the beginning of the season. We have not seen the last of Aaron Rodgers, definitely, but I think we've seen the last of Aaron Rodgers in a Packers uniform.
All right, guys, I have another question. So Cliff Kingsbury, he's done. We know that he will not be returning, and unfortunately for him, after he was canned, he's got to go hang out now with his Polish fitness model girlfriend. That's tough.
Yeah.
Lovie Smith,
wife.
You know, Lovie Smith was 1,000% shafted by the Texans there, and now Sean McVay doesn't know what the hell he's going to do next. So, Mike, the Rams aren't exactly built for a sudden turnaround here. How soon until they are contenders again?
Yeah, so without remembering specifically what some of their he's in contract situations are going to be, I would say this. The Rams season this year was much more about injury than incompetence, right? You looked at almost every major position on that roster, starting with the offensive line. Matthew Stafford is not a get-you-out-of-trouble quarterback with his legs. He's not Justin Fields that can run around back there. He's not even Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes as far as mobility. And so when that offensive line suffered unparalleled injury, like historic levels of injury along that offensive line, it undermined everything they had built that offense to be. And then you add, all right, now Cooper Kupp's dealt with injury. Matthew Stafford's dealt with injury. Even Aaron Donald, who we all thought was adamantium boned and indestructible. So I think if they just get healthy next year, we're already talking about a markedly different team. Obviously, that hinges on Sean McVay being the head man involved in that still, because that kind of continuity and that offensive mind do matter in the way that we look at this. Liam Cohen, their offensive coordinator, already heading back to Kentucky, so you see the pieces starting to move some. But I think just baseline health won't make them Super Bowl contenders again next year right off the bat, but it'll at least get them back into the conversations that we're used to having them in for a team that mortgaged their entire future for the present that they hit last year.
Yeah, exactly, Brandon. I mean, they sent off their packed away their 2 first-round picks to get Stafford. Like, their salary cap space has basically been chewed up for the next 2 years. As Mike mentioned, none of their stars are getting any younger.
Speaking of that, I think this is a really, really bad look for millennials with Sean McVay deciding to walk away.
Yeah.
I think it's like he's a great head coach, 36 years old. Like, it was our shining star. And after one rough season, he's like, you know what? I'm gonna take a gap year. It's like, come on, guys, you got to grind that stuff out. Hey, we're about to talk about the Rams like we did back when Chris Long was getting drafted for them. This is going to be a long. I guess it's normal for LA football to be kind of lowly and struggling, but I don't like that the head coach is the reason why they're going to be in shambles, because that guy's supposed to be the one leading the ship.
All right, guys. Finally, we have the return of the Gojo Rose of the Week.
Yay!
Let's go. Mike, who or what gets it?
Well, now that this went final, we can officially say Carlos Correa, he passed his physical.
Wow.
He beat his most powerful opponent this offseason in the physical that has cost him somewhere in the neighborhood of $150 million. But he still signs a deal with Minnesota. He gets to go back to where he spent this last season. 6 years, $200 million with room for more now, it sounds like. But obviously, a wild roller coaster of emotions going back to the December Giants offer, through the situation with the Mets, and now to here for a player where you feel bad because it's about his body. It's failed physicals. It's people trying to project out forward with that ankle injury that has never actually cost him meaningful time in the show, but he still gets a payday that's going to be north of $30 million a year at shortstop. Still one of the better contracts in the league. And now he is finally done with this saga. So he gets to rest easy and enjoy getting ready for baseball again.
Love that for him. Brandon, Gojo Rose of the Week, please.
I got to give it to Roquan Smith, linebacker.
Yep.
For the Baltimore Ravens for the next 5 years, $100 million man. I know Lamar Jackson hasn't got paid, but if I'm being real, I think Roquan Smith is more important to the Baltimore Ravens than Lamar Jackson is.
Oh, God.
I have to say that. I have to say that.
Whoa.
I have to say that. And I don't know if the money is the thing talking about it, but the fact that he's the first off-the-ball linebacker to make $20 million a year, everyone in the locker rooms congratulated him, and he just got there. I think that says a lot. Everyone's calling him Unc and Uncle. I think that says a lot. I think Roquan Smith is the Ray Lewis that we needed, that we thought Patrick Queen was going to be. So as much as I am silently panicking about Lamar Jackson's contract situation, if we ever see him in a Ravens uniform again, I am a little happy and settled in the fact that we got money on the right side of the ball for the Baltimore Ravens.
Mike, is he okay? What's going on?
Listen, I just want to revisit that take when Lamar Jackson's playing for, let's see where I can put, when Lamar Jackson, I think I saw someone, when he's playing for the Detroit Lions next year and the Ravens missed the playoffs. I can't wait to revisit this take with Brandon.
I don't know. Jared Goff looked decent this year. Mark Brunell deserves a lot of credit for what he did behind the scenes as his quarterback coach there in Detroit. But anyway, Brandon.
Former Jag Mark Brunell.
Oh, yeah. Buried the lead there. Yeah, my bad. Brandon, I didn't know the Gojo Rose of the Week segment was turning into this hot take segment now, but there we go.
I'm sorry.
He didn't have a celebrity relationship to put into this segment this week.
Yeah.
I feel like Quinta Brunson would be like too outside baseball.
I mean, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, it is.
Segment.
This is your segment. Yeah. Okay, we got to go. Tom Glennon says in my ear. That was great. Guys, adios. We will look at some best bets around the NHL coming up after this quick break.
All right. we're taking a look at Wednesday's NHL schedule. One thing to note, Austin Matthews will not play versus the Preds. He's day-to-day. They're going to reassess for Detroit on Thursday. It's something that's been lingering for a while. So you can see Paul Bruno shaking in fear, just absolutely quaking
Look
there
at
on the
you,
left.
Paul, dude.
Just kidding, Paul. I know you're not quaking. RotoWire's AJ Schultz, Paul Bruno here. Short 4-game slate. So we know Austin Matthews isn't playing. Let's make things easy. Just go through and get your favorite bet for each one of these games. We're starting in Philly. We'll talk about Austin Matthews later. We're going to start in Philly. Flyers hosting Ovechkin and the Caps. What bet makes sense for you in this game, Paul?
Look, the Flyers rebounded from one of their worst efforts of the season against the Leafs on Sunday with maybe their best game of the year on Monday, a 4-0 shutout over Buffalo. They're now 6-4 in their last 10, so you might think they're feeling up and positive and ready for this one, but the Caps are on a better roll with a 7-1-2 record, and they just got 3 key components back to their offense in TJ Oshie, Nick Backstrom, and Tom Wilson. So they're feeling pretty good about themselves, and I think that offensive boost is going to carry them tonight. I'll take them on the money line for a nice payout there.
All right, AJ, what's your best bet in this one?
Yeah, I'm not super confident that they could cover the puck line in this one. Paul mentioned both teams playing pretty well lately. So instead, I actually like the 60-minute line and taking the Capitals to win without the need for overtime. Gets you minus 105 value, so pretty much even money there. And then I also think you could consider looking at Nicholas Backstrom, who Paul mentioned, return for one game. This will be just his second game of the season. You can get a point out of him, comes in at minus 130. He's got that awesome top 6 role, should see plenty of power play opportunities, so you're not giving up a ton of juice, and all he needs is an assist or a goal. I think it should come for him tonight.
Okay, Paul, as we mentioned, your Austin Matthews-less Maple Leafs are hosting the Preds tonight. So Smashville has won 4 straight, but your boys have won the last 2 games by a combined 10-3 count, man. What's the bet in this one?
Yeah, those were a couple of easy wins. I'm still not crazy about the way the Leafs have been playing the last week and a half. Matthews and Brody, in fact, may both be missing. Brody, a key component on their defense. And so I'm prepared to say the Leafs will be in tough tonight. And Nashville, on the flip side, they come in on a very nice roll with a 7-1-2 record. And UC Saros has just been otherworldly, stopping all but 8 shots out of the last 160 that he's faced. That's a 95% save percentage over the last 4 starts. So he's at the top of his game. And you can say the same thing for a lot of the guys around him. On defense, they've got one of the key players in the league in Roman Josi, who's on fire. And up front, they've got a wealth of options. And I think they're going to take advantage of the Leafs' shortcomings tonight. 27 goals for the Nashville club in their last 6 games. I see them well worth the gamble. Pay up to get that 170 on the puck line here, on the money line here for them.
I was just going to say, AJ. Wow, man, I'm okay. Let me just drink some of my tea real quick. Preds have been hot, man. What do you like?
Yeah, I mean, as Paul mentioned, when I looked earlier today, it was 170. Now that the Austin Matthews confirmation of him being out, it's already dropped to plus 155. It could get even further down here. I think Nashville is absolutely the play here. 4-game winning streak for them right now, and playing, the Leafs without a key piece. Now, of course, they still have John Tavares, Mitch Marner, Willie Nylander, who's going to move to center on the second line to kind of fill out that top 6. But of course, anytime you lose Austin Matthews against any team, it's going to be a struggle. But a Preds team that's playing at a better level right now, I think you take Nashville and get that money line now before it drops even further.
All right, fellas, Connor McDavid and the Oilers are in Anaheim, who lost 7-1 to the Bruins in their last matchup. So AJ,
everybody loses to the Bruins.
Yeah, no doubt. Maybe you're going to target like a goal or points total for McDavid in this one against the last place team in their division.
Yeah, as you mentioned, there's not a ton of value here. Even going on the puck line, you're still just getting minus 110 for the Oilers tonight, but they should pretty much overpower this Anaheim team. So I like the alternate puck line. You give up those 2.5 goals, you'll get plus 135 out of the Oilers. I'm also going to stay away from McDavid to score. It's just not enough value right now. And when you look at their last 4 games, it's actually Zach Hyman who leads the team in goals here. You can grab him at plus 130 as the anytime goal scorer, or even Ryan Nugent-Hopkins plus 165. I think there's some great player props here on the DK Sportsbook.
Yeah, Paul, where can you find some value in this one?
I agree. I'm not touching any of the game lines here for this one. And AJ touched on it. For me, it's Ryan Nugent-Hopkins to get 1.5 points. I saw that bet paying off at plus 175. He's due for a big night after being blanked in his last 2 starts. This is a guy who's playing at better than a point per game pace year to date, and he gets all the high leverage minutes whenever this team's on the power play. So he'll get to play with the big boys, at least in those matchups. And sometimes he's been on a regular shift during the game. So sneaky good value there, could be a large payoff.
Paul, Sharks, Kings, 2 teams here heading in opposite direction. What is your favorite bet in this all-Cali clash?
Look, the Kings are justifiably a heavy favorite over the Sharks, coming in on a 7-2-1 streak in their last 10 with their offense in high gear, scoring 27 in their last 7 games played. Meanwhile, San Jose stumbled along for much of the season, and even in the last 10, they're only 3-5-2. They're one of the worst clubs in terms of allowing goals against, and so I'll take the homestanding Kings on the puck line at plus 115 here.
Yeah, Kings here have potted 11 biscuits in the basket the last 2 games, AJ.
That's exactly why I'm going to look at the over in this one. Both teams allowing more than 3 goals per game and scoring more than 3 goals per game this season. So the over, even at 6.5, it's a big number, but you get minus 110 value on that. I think we could see a 4-3 or 5-3 game here. I would expect the Kings to win if you're looking for a play there. Maybe consider the puck line for the Kings to get some value here, but I think it'll be a high-scoring game, so I think the total is the best place to target.
All right, thank you, Hockey Dudes, for helping us make sense of that slate. Coming up, we're going to look at the projected game totals for this weekend's NFL wildcard games. One of the highest totals on the board is the Giants-Vikings matchup. Can Daniel Jones and company light it up on the road in Minnesota? We're going to find out what our NFL panel thinks coming up next.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the show.
You didn't think you would take that one? All right.
No, I did, but here we go.
I wrapped the last
3,
segment.
2, 1. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Sweat here, presented by DraftKings. We're going to turn our attention to some over-under around the NFL with this 3-headed monster. Pierce Dietrich, Jeff Ulrich, and Julian Edlow.
All right, guys, as we mentioned before the break, one of the highest totals the Super Wildcard Weekend is Giants-Vikings, okay? Yeah. That's going down in Minnesota. The total is sitting at 48.5. So Daniel Jones, I mean, he had his best season as a pro this year. Vikings have been scoring and allowing other teams to score all year. So do the Giants have enough to help Minnie get this over? What do we think, Pierce?
Yeah, I like the Giants in this spot. I mean, we just saw this game. They hit 51, and I feel like they left some points on the table. Both quarterbacks, well, technically, they didn't both go over 300. Cousins is at 299, but the offenses look great. The receivers on both teams were amazing. Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson, obviously. I mean, when the Giants receivers are having big games, then, you know, you got to watch out. Both these defense, I think the Giants defense actually might be a little bit better in this case. The Vikings have had trouble closing people out all season long. They open the door. They let people rally back. They give up a ton of points. And, yeah, Jones is playing really well this year under Dable, but to be honest, under the previous offensive coordinators that he had, it's not much of a surprise. I don't know how much of it is Dable's a genius, which he was pretty good at Buffalo, or just getting anyone with some sort of a brain in New York is going to make this offense look a little bit better. They don't have a lot of weapons, but they know how to make it work. They know how to move the chains and score points. I'll take the over.
Are you taking the over, Jeff?
Not a lot of weapons, besmirching the good name of Richie James Jr., Darius Slayton, Isaiah Hodgins, who everybody knew who he was before the season started. Yeah, look, take me to Minnesota here for the points and the no defense. Yeah, this is going to be a back and forth sloppy game with lots of points, in my opinion. These two teams both ranked top 15 in the league in terms of pace of play. Minnesota right up there in the top 5. And again, I mean, like, you just look at the first game, what happened. I mean, the Minnesota got ahead and they just can't hold the lead. And you look at what New York has been doing down the stretch. So lucky against Washington of all teams to be able to hold on to a lead late. They were allowing, you had Dotson to kind of get free there. What is Justin Jefferson, KJ Osborne, and crew going to do it here? This is one game where I'm actually surprised that this total hasn't moved yet, and the public money hasn't been flowing in on, because it's still at a reasonable number. And as long as it stays like under 49 here, I'm definitely taking the over.
All right, 3 for 3 on the over, Julian?
The Giants are tough, man. Like, they scored 24 points that first time that they played in Minnesota. They only scored more than 24 points 2 other times on the season, I think. It was 27 at Green Bay, and then they dropped 38 against the Colts on New Year's Day. But I do like that the Giants were, recently in this atmosphere, playing this team in this building. It's indoors. I'm going to trust them. Or more of the reason really is that I don't trust the Minnesota defense. So I'll say that the Giants ultimately do their part here and put up points. I'm more worried about the Vikings. Justin Jefferson should have a good game, but Kirk Cousins, again, every playoff game is a primetime game. If I'm playing an over, I might even just consider, I do like the Giants +3, but if I'm playing an over, I might consider an over on the Giants team total.
Jeff, another high total. Jags, Chargers, 47.5 here. First ever primetime home playoff game for America's team. 47.5. You expect some offense in this one, like we mentioned yesterday, the only wildcard game with 2 4,000-yard passers.
This one's interesting. I'm going to take the under here. It's a little, it feels a little bit trappy, but shut up. Look, both these defenses played pretty well down the stretch. You do have to question the opponent a little bit, but I'm going to give them some credit because their defenses did look good in kind of just dominating. I mean, both of these defensive lines are extremely good. The Jags certainly down the stretch. That's what carried them into this game. Josh Allen getting a strip sack, obviously fumble for a touchdown. So I think you got to give them a little bit of respect there. Chargers defense was good down the stretch as well. Look, and you say, oh, well, they allowed Denver a bunch of points. They weren't playing for anything. The players knew they weren't playing for anything. Like, where was the motivation? Prior to that, Chargers defense had been extremely good. And yes, there were some weak opponents in there, but I think that the defenses here probably keep this one a little close. And also both these teams, it feels like, big moment for 2 young quarterbacks. You may just see a little bit of pressure here, just a little bit of sloppy offensive execution. I like the under this one as long as it stays at 47.5.
Yeah, Jules, maybe Jags try to lean on the ground game a little more, control the clock, keep the Chargers offense on the sidelines.
I'm going with the under here too at 47.5, and it is a key number. But we just saw Jacksonville struggle offensively. Their defense won them that game. They're going to have to run the ball, I think, in this matchup, and that obviously pushes you towards the under. If Trevor Lawrence wants to sling it, it's going to come against the strength of this Chargers defense, which is the secondary. And on the Chargers side, I love the matchup for Mike Williams, and if he can play in this game, but either way, he's going to be dinged up. Like, Justin Herbert wants to attack this defense deep, and Williams is the guy to do that. Keenan Allen maybe more of the possession receiver. So if Williams being dinged up plays any role in taking away from the Chargers' deep game here, that could take away a big play, a quick 7 points at one point in the game. Generate more passes to Allen, more passes out of the backfield to Eckler. So, yeah, not a total that I'm probably going to be playing, but the way things stand, I would lean under at 47.5.
Yeah, Pierce, a little nervous taking the over here as the Jags scored just 1 offensive touchdown against what a Titans pass defense last week. That was allowing the most passing yards per game. Now you go up against a team that's allowing the most rushing yards per game.
In all fairness, yeah, the Titans do struggle against the pass, but they're also really good against the run. So, that does eliminate half of your offense right there. Yeah, I would be very fearful of taking the over. Make it 3 unders for me. The public looks at the Chargers, and Julian just mentioned all those star names and all the star power, and the public thinks, all right, these guys got to be able to score points. But the public also, for the last 2 seasons, has crowned the Chargers the champs going into the regular season. Oh, this is going to be the year they win the AFC West, and it just never happens.
Never the Chargers.
At least they made the playoffs this year, but this is not a team that you can count on, and they're going to be facing a Jaguars team that really is playing with house money at this point. A month or so ago, it seemed like they were done and out of it, and they just started playing free and loose, and they've been winning ever since. They're going to be playing at home with a rowdy crowd. Chargers are known for letting people down. They're going to have a tough matchup. I just don't think that offense is going to get going. And on the other side, the Chargers defense is healthy, and I would expect a slightly conservative approach from the Jaguars. Win the game with defense. Don't ask for too much from Lawrence, and run the ball against a bad run defense. Give me the under.
All right, let's go to the other side here and look at one of the lower totals for the weekend, fellas. So in an NFC West showdown between the 49ers and the Seahawks, this game total sitting at 42.5 here. Ooh. Sheesh. And it's just getting lower. It was at 43, so it's moved down a little bit. Jules, how do you see this game playing out? I mean, San Fran giving up only 5 yards per play here, and you got Geno Smith and Brock Purdy, just a battle of certified elite quarterbacks here.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I think that we're kind of overlooking this one a little bit because, like you said, it's a Geno Smith versus Brock Purdy playoff matchup. So, you got to set the total low. I would be shocked if the Niners do lose this game. Reality might catch up to Brock Purdy at some point, but they ask him to do so little with all the weapons they have around him. It just keeps working. But look at Brock Purdy's starts. Like he generally is able to put up 30-plus points, and this is going to be at home against the Seahawks defense that isn't very good, particularly against the run. You got Christian McCaffrey. Last I looked, his prop set at 73.5 rushing yards. He went over 100 in his regular season matchup against him. I think that's a betting angle that you can look at in this game. Running the ball, yeah, you're going to grind some clock, but I think San Francisco, with Debo in there, McCaffrey, Kittle, they're going to find ways to put up points and make this not the game that Brock Purdy falls apart. And on the other end, I think Seattle should be able to do their part. So I'll take the over here. Geno Smith familiarity, at least third time around against San Francisco. And he's got the weapons like a DK Metcalf to go for a deep ball, particularly if game script holds and they're trailing in this game.
Pierce, I don't know. San Fran has held 8 of their last 10 opponents to under 20 points.
Yeah, the San Francisco defense probably isn't going to be the issue here. I don't expect Seattle scoring a lot of points. I'll go with the under. The bets are on the side of the over, but the cash has been on the under. We've seen the line move a half a point in the last day. It's probably going to move even further. I get that San Francisco has these explosive players, similar to the Chargers situation. The public's going to see, Christian McCaffrey, Kittle, all the receivers that San Francisco has, and expect an explosive game plan. But there's very good chance that Shanahan might just play conservative and just rely on his defense, and that should be good enough to win at home. You don't really need to score style points. You just need to win this game. And in reality, you look at the last time these teams matched up, I know the scoreboard makes it look a little bit more lopsided, but going into the half, it was a 7-3 game. Travis Homer fumbles the ball, and San Francisco returns it to the 5-yard line, gets a touchdown at the end of the half, and then that basically seals their fate. But they weren't scoring very many points. It was a very close, low-scoring game by two conservative coaches. I think we're going to see a low-scoring game.
All right, Jeff, what do you think? You want to go under 42.5 here?
Yeah, if this was at 43.5, I'm going to say over. I think this is a game of extremes. Like, I really think you could get extreme outcomes on both sides. The Seattle could score 3 points in this game. I don't think it would really be overly shocking. At the same time, the San Francisco's defense just allowed 34 points to Jarrett Stidham 2 weeks ago. And their offense has scored over 30 points in 3 straight games. So if you got like a 60-point game here, it wouldn't be overly shocking as well. At 42.5, I'm going to lean over. I think if this got up to 43.5, I would actually lean under. It's just kind of where it is right now. This is like a total where I don't think you need to go to your way to bet. But if you see a little bit of line movement either way, I think going over or under on both sides makes sense. Just really elite players on both sides of the ball for San Francisco, which I think could, like I said, lead to extreme outcomes for Seattle on either side. So maybe the offense pushes this to a huge over, but the defense could also just suffocate here and lead to a big under. So I'm going to lean over at 42.5, but if this one moves, would definitely consider the other side as well.
All right, guys, that's all the time we have here for over-under. By the way, Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel just ruling out Tua for Sunday's game against Buffalo. So it looks like Skylar Thompson is in line to start once again. But, Jeff, do hang out because we got one more segment to go. We are going to head to the links for some PGA Tour price check. Jordan Spieth hasn't won an event since April of last year. Can he get it done this week at the Sony Open? We will talk to you. We will talk to Len Hochberg right after this.
Final block of the show. Welcome back to the Sweat. Jesse and Emerson here, joined by our golf gurus over here. Yeah. DraftKings contributor Jeff Ulrich and RotoWire senior golf writer Len Hochberg. Fellas, thank you for being here. Let's talk Sony Open, okay? We have 4 players over 10K in salary this week with Len's number 1 guy, Tom Kim, leading the way at 10.5K.
Behind the wheel of the Caravan, right?
Yeah, one of the names there is Jordan Spieth, right at 10K. Now, he hasn't won since April, but could he be a good play this week? Or are you looking at like one of these other top priced over 10K options, Jeff?
Yeah, so I do like going with Sungjae Im this week if you're going over 10K. I mean, Sungjae has just been so consistent, and you look at where he's done his best work. It has generally come on tracks where a little bit shorter in nature. You think back to the Honda Classic, which he won right before the pandemic. Even the Shriners, which is just kind of like a target birdie fest where, what you're doing off the tee isn't so big a deal. And Sungjae is very consistent off the tee, so he's not going to get in any trouble with these skinny fairways. He's just been so good since basically, August. I mean, runner-up finish at the Tour Championship, making some cuts and putting in some top finishes, obviously playing in the President's Cup. He's just a player who seems well overdue for a win, whereas Spieth, if you look at what he did last week, really wasn't that good on approach. He had like one little run there where he kind of got up near the lead and you think maybe this is it. But to me, Spieth is more of a top 20 play. If you really want to go for a player who looks like, ready to break through, played last week and looks near the top of his game, I think paying up for Sungjae Im is more than reasonable here.
All right, Len, what do you think? You like your guy Tom Kim leading the way there?
Well, I hope the two of you are sitting down for this one. Emerson, Jesse, and Jeff, please all sit down. I love Tom Kim. I love the Caravan, but I'm leaving it in the garage this week.
No.
Wow.
Yeah. Tom Kim has never played YLA Country Club before. It is a very tricky course. The last 17 years, 15 of the winners have played the course at least twice before winning. We've seen guys play very poorly for a number of years and then start to figure it out. So I'll be very surprised if he contends this week, and at that price, he pretty much has to contend. I'm, unlike Jeff, not a big fan of Sungjae Im. He has not played particularly well at this course. You would think he would, and maybe one day he will. Jordan Spieth, just top 20s here and there, not a lot of top 10s. If I like anyone in the top, and I really don't, it would be Matsuyama, the defending champion. I think there's so much more to play in the 9s and the 8s this week.
Well, you know who has played here a bunch, Len? That's Russell Henley. This will be his 11th trip around this course. We all know what happened to him last year, the collapse, Jeff Ulrich, and losing in a playoff to Hideki, who, man, that was an absolute dart that he had to win the damn thing. Len, is he going to be, Russell Henley, is he going to be your guy in the 9K range?
He's one of them. Yeah, for sure. You know, of the I said 15 of the last 17 winners had played at least twice before winning on this course. Well, Russell Henley in 2013, it was his first PGA Tour event, and he won the tournament. So in retrospect, in hindsight, this is a perfect course for Henley. He was second last year, should have won again. He's had 3 other top 20s through the years. This is all about greens in regulation. You have got to be 80% and above, and he was last year, and yet he still wasn't in the top 5. Lucas Glover was almost 90% last year. So this is really the best course all year for Russell Henley. I do like him a lot. Whether he'll win, I don't know, but he should be in the mix again.
Jeff, you like Sung Jae, a former Honda Classic winner. Russell Henley, also a former Honda Classic winner.
Great point. Fairly good correlation between those two courses, friend. And yeah, I mean, look, Henley last week, you know, obviously disappointing, but he actually talked about this in his press conference. There is a vast difference between the greens that are in play this week and last week. Last week, massive slopes, massive greens. Greens here, small, little slopes. You can really get it rolling. Russell Henley, typically just like not the greatest speed control on his putter, and he doesn't really have to worry about that this week. He can be more aggressive on the smaller greens. I think you're going to see a big flip with that club. You'll probably see flip from a couple people who didn't putt well last week. Adam Svensson is another positive regression candidate with that club. But the other player I don't mind in the 9K range, and he played last week too, Keegan Bradley at 9,300. He's got a very, very solid record at this event. You know, coming off a win in the fall as well. Keegan's very accurate. Like Glenn said, he's going to hit a ton of greens for you. So there are a couple different players in the 9K range here. And I think some of them could just go, because the ownership here is going to be very spread. You got Harman, Connors, Hoagie, Henley. You know, you're not going to get super high ownership on a lot of them. So Henley, definitely a player. Tons of upside on this course. We know that. But Keegan Bradley, someone else to watch for this week too.
All right, Len, who's your favorite DFS play? Who you going with?
Yeah, there were a few of them. I know we're running out of time, but I do want to mention that Keegan Bradley is one of them. I agree with Jeff. He's putting so much better than he used to putt. He can come close to winning this week. KH Lee, 8,700, can fit in a lot of lineups. 7th last week.
All right, Jeff, where are you going?
So my favorite overall play going to be Cam Davis for DFS. He's just got such an insane birdie rate. He ranks first in birdie or better percentage over the last 50 rounds. We need our guys to get to 20 under here. Cam Davis does extremely well on short courses too, coming off a nice fall, played in that President's Cup, got some good history here. Nothing not to like about Cam Davis at 8,500 this week.
All right, Ulrich, you, me, and our intern Nick Fryer will talk a lot more golf tonight and NFL odds, 5 o'clock Wednesday edition of the slate. Also some really good news here just came down. Bills Damar Hamlin discharged from Buffalo Hospital 9 days after suffering cardiac arrest. So fantastic news to end the show. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock Eastern Time. And tonight, 5 o'clock, the slate.